Hi, good morning. It's Monday, June 22nd. It's Marcy. I woke up this morning scrolling through Instagram like I usually do when I'm trying to find being awake. And I came across a video that Glennon Doyle made this morning in her, what she calls her morning meetings, where she talked about mental health and mental illness and her experience with it that she bears her soul with in her book Untamed, which I've only just started reading yesterday actually, and I'm already like completely sucked in. And I thought that I would pick up the baton that she passed to me without knowing she was passing it to me, and talk about my own experience with mental illness and mental health with you for just a few minutes today. So I grew up with within my mother's mental illness without really knowing what was going on. Kids never really know what's going on. She was an undiagnosed bipolar with very low lows that lasted a long time and very high highs that were unpredictable. And so I never knew what was going to happen from one day to the next. I didn't know how she would react to any given situation, because she could react in any myriad of ways to every situation that she was presented with. So the environment that I grew up in was very unsafe and unpredictable and unstable. My mother was also narcissistic and really only thought about the world from her own perspective. She didn't really think about it from anyone else's perspective. She came across as very loving and generous, but I think that was because she was raised to be loving and generous, but I think that for her the love and the generosity was a way of making herself feel better rather than making the object of that love or generosity feel better. I think it was about her and making herself feel and look good and worthy, etc., and less about what she was actually doing for the other person. So being an only child and being extremely sensitive, like I've always been by nature, living within a world that felt unsafe and unpredictable, made me feel like I had to be the best version I could be. It turned me into a people pleaser, because if I did what my mother wanted, if I predicted what she was going to want so that she didn't have to explode, so that she didn't have to get really upset and scary and yell, if I could do everything that I could do in my power to keep the peace, to create an environment that I felt more secure in by pleasing her, it would make things better. And I internalized this behavior and learned incorrectly that my only value was to please other people, that only when I am making others happy did I feel love, and did I feel worthy of love, did I feel like I deserved love. So I grew up with this notion that it was up to me to fix other people's problems, to do kind things to people to make them feel better, to make them feel good, to keep them from exploding on me, from acting unpredictably, to make them like me, to make them love me. And there's only so much of that a person can do without giving away all of themselves, which is what I was ultimately doing. So my mother was very unhappy her whole life, and undiagnosed bipolar. She was in and out of therapy, didn't believe that her happiness was within her own control or even her own responsibility. She herself was shy and felt unworthy, and because of how unhealthy she was with her own behaviors and her own patterns, I got stuck inside of all of that. And then when I was 13, my father left my mother with the intention of not leaving me, but he did. And for his own reasons, he wasn't present. And I felt abandoned. And so I am a super sensitive, empathetic, emotionally intelligent person caught in the trap of believing that I was unworthy unless I was pleasing others and doing what made them happy. And it put me in a very bad, repeating pattern of behavior. And so that every romantic relationship that I pursued or took part in was a mirror of my relationship with my mother. I think psychically, unconsciously, I was trying to work that out. Now, those relationships felt comfortable for me because it was the same thing that I was used to. And not being aware of what it was that I was doing, I kept getting involved with those men because their narcissism made me feel safe, even though I wasn't safe, because it was familiar and felt exactly like how it had felt with my mother. It's weird. And the charm of a narcissist, the charismatic, I'm gonna own the world magnetism of a narcissist is very hard to resist, especially if you're a people-pleasing empath. Or people-pleasing, I have no boundaries, give over all of myself to help you feel better and fix your problems, and then you'll love me person. That's who I was. And my first husband was like that. And it took me 12 years to figure out that I didn't have to fit in that box and that I could move on. And then my mother died and of her addiction and so on. So that ended that. And so the two most toxic people in my life were gone and things were much more peaceful. But what did I do? The next relationships that I had over the 10 years that I was single, in between marriages, were mostly with narcissistic men because, again, that's what I was used to. But each time I got involved with one of these men, the duration of time that it took me to figure out what was wrong and to extricate myself kept getting shorter and shorter. So I was involved with this narcissism and bipolarness and all this other stuff, bipolarity rather, and all this other stuff with my mom from birth to however old I was when she died. So I was how old? 46-ish? I don't remember exactly. So that was 46 years. And my marriage was 12 years. And my next relationship was 5 years and then out the door. And my next relationship after that was 1.5 years out the door. And then my next disastrous relationship was 6 weeks and out the door. And I sat there as that last relationship was ending. I sat there with my therapist and she's like, "Are you done? Have you learned the lesson yet? Has the universe taught you what you need to know?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I think I finally got the last 4x4 to my head and I finally get it." And it was at that point exactly that it all seemed to click into place. I had started to learn while I was dating that I needed to have boundaries and that their problems were not my problems, that I could be empathetic and caring about their problems, but it was not my job or anything within my power to fix their stuff. I could give advice, I could give support, I could say, "Great job," I could say, "Why don't you do this?" But I didn't have to go in and do it. I no longer felt, it's a process, I no longer felt like I was responsible. That's huge. I was a people pleaser, so I was a fixer. And I would pick people who needed problems fixed so that I could do them. I'm organized, I'm intelligent, I'm creative, I think outside the box. I do not procrastinate for the most part. I am your girl. You want a problem done, you want a problem fixed, you want something solved, you call Marcy. But now Marcy's going to say no if it doesn't align with what my heart wants, if it doesn't align with my plans for myself, with my peace, with my sanctity of my home, of my the life that I've created for myself. I think it's important that we all continue to have these conversations, which is why I wrote my book. I was compelled to tell this story. I was telling little snippets of these things, dealing with my mom as a bipolar, dealing with my mom as the drug addict, hypochondriacal, crazy person that she was. One day she's Cruella de Vil, and the next minute she's Mary Poppins. It's hard to live with. But I was telling all of these stories to my students over the years. And my intention was to create a connection between them and me, to let them know that they weren't alone, to let them know that I understood, to share our human experience with each other, because that makes us happier, because it makes us feel less isolated, because it makes us feel the companionship and the community of people who care about us, because that's what we're meant to do. And so this book is the culmination of all of that. And I think these videos are bringing me closer to my intention, to my calling, to my purpose, which is to keep having these conversations with you and to encourage dialogue. We all suffer at the hands of others until we learn to take control of ourselves, and dealing with my mom not only caused me to be a people pleaser, not only caused me to fall victim to all these narcissists, but also created a low level of anxiety in my life, so that I am dealing with anxiety on a daily basis, and have been for many years. And it wasn't until after my divorce that I finally got a therapist to prescribe some Klonopin for me. The lowest dose. I take a half of a 0.25 milligram pill, it's a little pink thing. I break it in half and I take it as needed, and it just settles that tightness down. Like, I can feel it. I'm already asthmatic, so I know what it feels like when I can't breathe. And then when I'm feeling anxious from a situation or from a person or from politics that are going on in our world right now, the COVID-19 epidemic, for the last 3 or 4 months, things have been extremely hectic in all of our lives. But I can feel the anxiety. For me, what it feels like is like I'm wearing a corset, and that everything in my chest gets super tight and compressed, and everything is pushed in, and I can't take a deep breath. And that's to me what anxiety feels like. It feels like my windpipe and my esophagus and everything in my chest is getting completely compressed and tight. And a half a Klonopin and some deep breathing and a little meditation, and it all eases. The problems don't disappear, but my negative physical reaction to them is abated, calmed. And I would also encourage that anybody who is on any sort of medication for mental health issues to not feel bad about it. If I was a diabetic, would you keep me from insulin? If I needed a heart medication because I had arrhythmia, would you keep my medication from me, or say, oh, Marcy's on medication, she's crazy? No, it's a serotonin imbalance, or it's a chemical imbalance that causes anxiety. So what? So I take this little half of a pill and I wait a little while and I'm fine. But you also have to do behavioral management, and I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of talking, clearly, and a lot of listening to what's going on here, what's going on inside me. Anyway, this is an ongoing conversation. One 15-minute video is not going to make or shake anything, except to let you all know that I'm here and I'm listening, and I'm going to keep talking, and I hope you keep talking, and we have to be there for each other. That's what this world's about. It's all about love. It's all about understanding. It's all about being there for one another, fighting for one another. It's all about love. Anyway, I've taken almost 15 minutes of your time. It is a lovely Monday. I'm going to go sit outside for a little while and enjoy the sun before it disappears. And I'll see you soon.